This is a Monty moment, and I'm Johnny Montalbano. Well, the MLB Trade Deadline has come and gone, but not without some big time moves. Obviously, the biggest one being Juan Soto, who was dealt from the Nationals to the Padres. Padres are also able to pick up Josh Hader from the Brewers and Brandon Drury from the Reds, and they, to me, one of the big winners of this deadline. And now a team that's got to be taken very, very seriously coming down the stretch, and really for the next couple of years when you look at it. Now they've got Soto to go along with Fernando Tatis when he returns. Now Brandon Drury, who's having a career year. So that Padres team is going to be very, very dangerous if they make a deep run here in the playoffs. And even if they don't do it all this year, you know what? This is a team that's got a few-year window now with Soto under control. That's why I love the move for the Padres. You know, there were teams being talked about here with Juan Soto. You know, the Yankees were just being discussed, and I didn't like it from a Yankee perspective, not because of the player, but because of the fit. The different situation with the Padres. Yes, they gave up a ton of prospects and talent, but when you've got Soto and Tatis and Machado, and now you've added Brandon Drury into that mix, you know, Jake Cronenworth, who's a nice little player, Jerison Profar, who's very versatile. You know, one thing now that the Padres got is they've got versatility now along with Drury, and now obviously we know Cronenworth can play multiple positions, and even Profar, so they can mix guys around. You know, Will Myers, a power bat too. So you look at it now, all of a sudden that NL West becomes very, very interesting. It comes down to, obviously, it's going to be a two-team race there with the Dodgers and the Padres. So I love that. I think the Friars were one of my big winners of the deadline. Another big winner of this deadline to me, the New York Yankees. You know what? They had three areas of need that they had to address in this trade deadline, even though they have the best record in baseball. You've watched their games the last couple of weeks. You've seen that they've had some flaws, and you know what? They shored up those areas without giving any big-time prospects away. You know, Andrew Benintendi, that contact bat that even though this lineup has been great for most of the season, they can be very, very streaky. And you know what? One thing Benintendi does, he puts the bat on the ball, he gets on base. He's that kind of guy that I think every team needs. And, you know, he can play good left field, shores up that defense as well. So I like that move. And, again, not many big-time prospects going in that move. Frankie Montas, you know what? I would have preferred Luis Castillo, but you look at what the Yanks gave up to get Montes, who did have a little bit of an injury issue earlier on in the season. You know what? Again, not any big-time prospects. You get a sure number 2 starter behind Garrett Cole, which is something that the Yanks have needed. Also, you know what? Lou Trevino, I understand he's been struggling as a reliever lately, but one of the reasons why they brought him in, look at his career numbers against some of those Astro players. The Yanks are looking ahead to a possible Yankee-Astro ALCS. So bringing in Trevino, another arm for that bullpen, which has had some injury problems throughout this season. You know, they've lost multiple guys to injury, and other guys have struggled. You know what, can't hurt bringing him in as well. You know, they bring in Efros from the Cubs, a guy who's got control for 5 years, a side-arming right-hander. Again, you know what, nice numbers this year, very under-the-radar kind of move, and sometimes some of Brian Cashman's strength is those under-the-radar kind of moves. So 3 areas of need the Yanks needed to get. A contact bat, they got that. A number 2 starter, they got that. Reliever, they got 2 of them. You know what? And, yeah, the big surprise right at the very end of the deadline on Tuesday was trading Jordan Montgomery to the Cardinals for Harrison Bader. And you know what? To me, Montgomery was one of the more consistent pitchers. You know, he was making all of his starts. I know he had a little bit of a struggle down the stretch. But you bring in Harrison Bader, who I understand is injured right now. He can shore up your defense, which I think the Yanks do need. I think Aaron Judge, as great as he's been, even in the field this year, you want to save his legs. So you know what? I stick him back in right field, and Hader can come in. He's that defensive replacement. Also can steal a base. He's got 15 steals this year. And again, I understand he's dealing with plantar fasciitis. He's expected to be back in September. You know what? Shore up your defense. Can't hurt doing that. The thing now you're going to have to watch with this Yankees team now is their pitching staff. You know what? Now with Cole and Montes, who I would say are gimmies, you know what? The rest of that rotation now starts to come to a little bit of a question. I know Jameson Taillon's got 10 wins, but he's had starts this year that have struggled. You have Nestor Cortez, great first half, but now he's entering a territory that he's never done before. You know what? He's never made 30 starts in a season. He's now got a career high in innings pitched. So that's something to watch. And now who's going to slide into that 5 spot? Is it going to be Domingo Germán, or is it going to be Davy Garcia? With Luis Severino transferred to the 60-day IL, we're not going to see him until September. So that's something to watch now, especially if you're the Yankees here and you're going for the best record in baseball, in the American League and in baseball, really, to get home field advantage. You know what? You've got a race now with the Astros and even the Dodgers out there in the National League. So something to watch there. But I think all in all, I'd give the Yankees an A for what they had to do, because they addressed three areas of need without trading the top prospects away. And for all those that have wanted to say, oh, they're just prospects, this is a different Yankees team now. You know, this team's run differently. The mindset's different. This is not like George's Yankees back then. We have to get away from that. You know what? Things have changed. We've seen that in the last several years. And let's be honest too. This is huge for Brian Cashman, because the Yankees, short of a World Series this year, he probably doesn't come back. You know, it's different when you start with the best record in baseball and you get off to such a hot start and you're like this all season. Your expectations go through the roof. The Yankees the last several years have been able to make the playoffs, but they've had slow starts. They've had rough stretches for a long period of time. It's different right now, and you now arguably have the best player in baseball in Aaron Judge, who, you know what, we'll see if they were able to sign him back this offseason. You know, Anthony Rizzo's had a tremendous year. You know, you've gotten great production from other guys in this lineup for the most part, even some unexpected guys like Jose Trevino. You know, it's a lot of pressure on Cashman now and the Yanks to at least make a World Series this year. And you think about it, with the way they're playing, anything short of a World Series is going to be very, very disappointing. But they're going to be challenged big time by the Houston Astros, who went out there and got Trey Mancini. And I like what the Astros have done to continue to shore up that team as well. I thought the Minnesota Twins also had a great deadline, bringing in a few relief pitchers and Jorge Lopez from the Orioles. They got Tyler May, the starter from the Reds. So they were able to shore up Michael Fulmer they got from Detroit. So they're able to shore up that pitching staff to go along with some contact guys that they have in that team. So the American League, you know what? One thing I would say, you look at what's come out of this deadline, I think the teams in the American League that you expected to make deep runs, I think they're going to be right there too. You know, the Blue Jays are not going to go away quietly too. You know, they got Whit Merrifield right at the very end, a guy who plays pretty much every game, you know, contact guy, steals some bases. He's a very short player. Of course, we'll have to see if he gets vaccinated, but you would imagine now that's going to be the case. So that's what you're going to have to watch there in the American League. In the National League, a big winner to me in the deadline was, obviously, besides the San Diego Padres, the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, they're not that far out of it. When you look at, you know, they're going to be contending for that wild card spot. Bryce Harper close to returning off that injury, and they went out there, made a couple of moves. You know, Noah Syndergaard in the rotation, David Robertson, the closer. I think that was a great move. That's a guy I think the Mets really need to target for the relievers. So I think the Phillies, big winners in the National League, out along with the Padres. So my big winners so far, my biggest winners of this deadline, the Yankees, the Padres, the Astros, the Twins, and the Phillies in baseball. Now, as far as the losers of the deadline, to me, the Washington Nationals. And when I say the Nationals, I really mean their fan base, who I feel really bad for, because it was only 3 years ago that this team won a World Series. And the only guy that seems to remain from that team is Steven Strasburg, who can't stay on the field. You know, he's been dealing with numerous injuries. You know, Anthony Rendon gone, Bryce Harper gone, Trey Turner gone, now Juan Soto gone. And yeah, you know what? They got a lot of top prospects back for him, but you know, you look at that team, and boy, you don't recognize anybody outside of Strasburg, but he's not on the field, and maybe Patrick Corbin, and that's it. I'll tell you, that organization is going to a total rebuild right now. So I don't get, you know, it's going to be a long road back for the Washington Nationals with what they have to do. Also, the Red Sox, they're a team very interesting, because I feel like they're going halfway with it. We've heard a lot of reports about them trying to trade JD Martinez. He does not get dealt. They trade Christian Vasquez to the Astros when they're playing each other literally like an hour before one of their games. And yeah, it's, you know what? And then they go out there and they get Eric Hosmer. So it almost makes me think that, you know, it's not like a rebuild. It's like a rebrand with the Red Sox. And one thing they have to shore up is that pitching staff. In July, some historical numbers about the amount of runs they gave up. Remember, they gave up 28 runs in one game to the Blue Jays. And then they had games before that where they were giving up 13 and 14 runs to the Yankees. So that pitching staff's got to get redone. But you know what? The Red Sox have had years, you know, when they have one down year, they seem to bounce back with one great year. And so it would not surprise me if next season they come right back and they contend for a wild card spot. And yeah, they're still technically in the wild card race. But I tell you, I don't get what they were trying to do. I mean, if they're going to go for a sell-off, you know what, go sell the whole thing. You know, whether it's Xander Bogaerts, who's not happy. I know Rafael Devers just came off the injured list, but, you know, what's his future going to be there? JD Martinez would have been a perfect fit on the Mets, in my opinion. And I don't understand what the Red Sox were doing. Maybe they were asking price was too high. That's something we saw a common theme in this deadline, was maybe the asking price was too high for a lot of these guys. Same thing with like the Chicago Cubs, who were trying to deal Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ, were not able to do so. So to me, I don't really know what the plan is for the Red Sox. It could be a rebrand more than a rebuild. You know, sometimes that word rebuild is tough to deal with, but if you do it the right way, you can contend again in a couple of years. But I don't get what the Red Sox are doing. And the Mets, to me, you know, I think of them as a loser in this deadline, but I don't think it's because they didn't make the big move. It's because the Braves and the Phillies both made big additions and great moves as well. Like we mentioned, the Phillies got David Robertson, which I love for that bullpen. You know, Noah Syndergaard to add to that rotation. You know, it'd be interesting in that small ballpark at Citizens Bank what he could do. But you know what? He knows the NL East from being with the Mets, and I think I like that move a lot. And remember, Bryce Harper is close to returning, and he can give an extra boost to that lineup. You know, he was having a great year, even though he was dealing with an elbow injury before he got hit by a pitch in San Diego and broke his thumb. But he's working his way back. Don't count out the Phillies to make a wild card push down the stretch here, and I like these moves that they made. So to me, the Braves, you know, shoring up that pitching staff again. You know, they're close to getting Ozzie Albies back, which would help them as well. You see the numbers that they're putting up even without Albies. You know, they're scoring a lot of runs. Their pitching staff's been very, very good. You know, now they shore up that bullpen even more with Raisel Iglesias now coming over from the Angels. You know, remember, to me, the Braves, I still believe that at the end of the day, the Braves are going to win the NL East. And I don't think it's because the Mets are going to fall apart here. I think it's just because the Braves are that good. And as far as the Mets go, so the reason why I think the Mets are a loser is not because of the moves they made or didn't make. It's because, to me, the Braves and the Phillies both added in a big way. And to me, I still think the Braves are the better team in this division. Now, to me, the Mets, though, I think they're still going to make the playoffs as a wild card team. Look, yes, you would have loved to seen a power bat and a big-time reliever. Now, they did go out there and get Michael Givens, who Buck Showalter knows well from his days in Baltimore. So I like that move to shore up the bullpen. The bat situation, interesting. You know, obviously before they got Daniel Vogelbach, who has helped them out in a little ways. You know, Tyler Naquin in the outfield, and Darren Ruff, who could be that platoon right-handed bat. Now, I would have preferred a JD Martinez to a Darren Ruff, but Ruff does have some power. He does have 11 home runs, but he doesn't really hit for a high average, and he doesn't really get on base as much. I mean, he's got a 320 on base percentage versus a 216 average, so he does, compared to the average, he does get on base, but you know, you still want more of a proven commodity there, and I think Ruff can provide something, but I just don't know if that's going to be enough. And they did give up a lot to get him too. You know, J.D. Davis, who I don't think had a spot on this team no matter what, but to also give up a couple of a couple of prospects in addition to that might have been a little bit much. But I don't think the Mets are going to fall apart here. I think if they're going to get overtaken, it's going to be because the Braves are that good. The Mets and the Braves have a huge 5-game series coming up this weekend, and that might determine the direction of the NL East. So we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you what. Say what you want. These last 48 hours leading up into the trade deadline and now leading into the post talk about it, it's something that baseball needed. You know, they've been dealing with a lot of problems since the lockout, a lot of negative discussion, a lot of on the field discussion about, you know, the rule changes and the product and all the injuries, and of course Rob Manfred, what's been going on. But they needed this discussion for the last 48 hours and going forward, just to talk about on the field. And now it sets up an amazing, you know, last 2 months of the season. There were two things about this deadline also that made it very, very special. Only one deadline. You know, there's no waiver wire now on August 31st. So there's just the one regular trade deadline. And now the extra teams that are being made into the postseason now being added. That's what made this deadline interesting. You had a lot more teams making moves, thinking that they can contend for that wild card spot. And in baseball, you know what? You get in, your pitching staff does the job in that spot. You never know. You know, sometimes having that bye may not work in baseball. Yeah, you want to rest your pitchers and stuff, but at the same time, is it going to really work? Short series, long series, you never know. So all those extra teams that are going to be added in to the playoffs starting this year are going to create for quite a ride. But just to recap, so my winners of the deadline, the Yankees, the Padres, the Astros, the Twins, and the Phillies. And to me, the losers of the deadline, the Nationals, the Red Sox, and the Mets. The Mets, again, not really because they didn't make the move. It's because I believe the Braves and the Phillies both had great moves. But a wild deadline, and now we'll see as we have the final 2 months of the regular season and into the playoffs. I tell you, look at the American League. I think it's still going to come down to the Yankees and the Astros. I think the Twins and the Blue Jays will make make a push, but I'd still be very, very surprised, barring any crazy injuries to either the Yankees or the Astros, that we're not seeing them in the ALCS. The National League now becomes a little bit more of an interesting situation because the Dodgers, I know, have 70 wins, but now with the moves that the Padres made, getting obviously Soto and Tatis returning real soon, they may be able to outslug their way into the postseason. And then as far as the other teams in the National League, the Milwaukee Brewers in that NL Central, which is not really a strong division. Cardinals, who did get Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana to shore up some pitching staff, almost like what they did last year at the deadline to shore up some pitching. Cardinals seems to always find a way too, to make a run as well. And then in the NL East, now it's really a 3-team possibly race. I still think the Braves are the best team, but the Mets are going to still be there because now the talent that they have and the capable manager, and the Phillies are going to make a wild card run. So you know what, I think the National League a little bit more wide open than it's been before, but it might come down to the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Padres. But you know what? It's a little bit more wide open in the NL East, in the NL in general, now post this deadline. So we'll find out what happens in the final 2 months. For more, like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB. You can also follow me on Twitter at MontalbanoNY. And this has been a Monty moment, and I'm Johnny Montalbano.